To look up a really weird thing. Look up and find out about the jelly house. Once upon a time, a long time ago, I can't exactly tell you when it was. Somewhere around the 50s maybe or so, I'm not exactly sure. They built a whole jelly house for me out of a special kind of jelly. It actually took a fair amount of work to do this, actually. And they actually perfected jelly for me. You know, the jelly that's in jelly, what's it called? They actually had to create a factory. The factory that actually now makes Jello, basically. If you look in the very past of the house, the factory that makes Jello for America or Russia or whatever, the world's largest producer of jelly, the jelly that they use for Jello. When they were building that, I wanted to know if they could make a jelly house or make solid water. Actually, I think that might have been how we got jelly in the first place, or Jello in the first place. Is I was wondering if they could make solid water or a water house, basically. And they did make a Jello house. It used a special type of Jello. Not like the Jello that you receive today and eat, but it was a concentrated, slightly different version, and I believe non-edible. It was semi-edible, basically, though. But it was very hard, and was actually, you could actually build with it. And they actually did build a small house about, I believe I requested it to be about 4 foot. I never actually saw it other than in pictures. But it was about the size of this room, actually. Yeah, it's about the size of this room. They built a room about this big. The walls were, I believe, 2 or 3 feet thick. The floor was, I think the walls were 6 feet thick in order for it to keep its structure. And the floor was at least 2 feet thick as well. Of course, the walls were not planted on the Jello itself. They were actually on a special foundation, which kind of supported the bottom a little bit up a couple feet, and then allowed for the, what's it called? The roof was not Jello, by the way, but the walls and the floor was Jello. And it was this special house they built for me to test out my theory of whether or not they could make a solid water house. And it was a Jello house. They accused me. I think I might have actually asked people to donate their, they needed a lot of bones, basically. A lot of bones. So they redirected basically every slaughterhouse, all kinds of bones to basically make this Jello house. So in that way, maybe, I mean, they were already dead. It was already dead. They would have just been thrown away, and instead they were used for Jello. It was quite an undertaking, and I didn't really know where Jello came from at the time, or gelatin came from. It was the scientists who came up with the way of doing it. So when I asked for it, I didn't really exactly know what I was asking for exactly. I didn't realize the process involved in what's called, later on I was called a monster, of course, and they even said that they had killed people to create this special house, but they hadn't. It was just basically the rediverting of every bone for like a whole country's worth into one factory, which then made gelatin out of it. And later on it was sold as Jello. I mean, people made Jello out of it and stuff like that. But where gelatin comes from, and why it was created was actually to make me a Jello house. Well, I mean, it was a science experiment. It wasn't actually for me exactly. I never actually even saw it in person. I just saw pictures of it and stuff, and saw them building it. And it was quite an undertaking. It took about a team of like 100 people, basically, a couple months to actually build it. I think it took like 3 months or something like that for them to do it. And a little bit longer to come up with all that gelatin. But the true reason of why humanity has Jello, you wouldn't believe that it was because I was wondering if they could make a solid water house out of water, and it turns out that they could. But the undertaking of which, and actually in society, the reason why everyone has Jello nowadays is because I was wondering if they could use water as a building thing to make a solid water house, or somewhat waterish house. And that's where Jello actually comes from. And somebody, I don't know exactly who it was that figured out how to solidify water, but they did, and that's why humanity has Jello. Because I was wondering if it could be used as a building material. It wasn't a serious consideration. It was just a science experiment of could it be done, and they found a way to do it. And then later on, they sold it as yummy with some flavors. I believe the house was actually yellow. I believe. Not exactly sure exactly what color it was. I think the film was in black and white, though. I'm not exactly sure, but I think they might have recreated the experiment twice. But yes. I was labeled a monster, and it worked. The scientists did it. So, and now people buy gelatin everywhere and actually can buy it inside little packages. And that's basically where it comes from, pretty much, is my random experiment use water as a serious building element. It was a long time in my past. I was a child back then. But yeah, it was just a question, and humanity answered it for me. So, or my people did. So, I mean, no one got hurt really. They were already dead. So, and I believe a few people were, after they had died, there were a couple people that were used, maybe bones of people. I'm not exactly sure. Just like skeletons. Believe it or not, the reason why people have skeletons were used inside of schools and hospitals for so long is because I requested of my people to maybe donate their skeletons to science, or their bodies to science. And when they did that, they were then put together and used as skeletons because they couldn't recreate the skeleton exactly. But then later on, because it was kind of morbid to have an actual human skeleton dangling inside of a school, they did. And because the demand for the skeletons was so high, they found a way to make cast of skeletons to make a fake skeleton for schools and other things. And that's pretty much where all that comes from as well. So many things that humanity wouldn't have or wouldn't know about if a little crazy little Lucifer child who was just wondering things didn't ask. And they didn't try and find out. I don't think they would have tried if it wasn't for the vast amounts of power or wealth I had. I don't know. I mean, helping humanity, basically, or changing the universe, changing the world, changing the way everything is. I'm not exactly sure how you look at it, but I mean, it's true. So, well, a crazy little child that just... I love you, my people. Please don't hate me.